White Centipede Noise Podcast is made possible by your support via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/White Centipede Noise to support, and stay tuned to hear about the exclusive benefits and bonus content available with this episode. You are now listening to White Centipede Noise Podcast. I'm Oscar Brummel, and today my guest is Pete Jennings of PAIN APPENDIX, an American industrial harsh noise artist with a dedicated body of work comprised of many international splits and several solo albums with a deeply personal and devotional aura. All right, well, Pete, welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast.
Thank you, Oscar. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate that you took the time this morning. I know you're a busy man and you got a lot going on. Interestingly enough, like a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, I should ask Pete from PAIN APPENDIX to come on. He's been doing a lot of really good stuff lately, and he's got a new album out on Freak Animal, which I hadn't heard yet. So I reached out to you and I was like, hey, do you want to do it? You were like, yeah. And then I said, hey, can you send me the files from your new album, which is called... remind me how to pronounce it.
My pronunciation is pretty simple. I just hypnose. It's a made up word. I made the word up. So,
but point is, I was like, yeah, would you mind sending me the files so I can check it out before we start? And you're like, yeah, sure, because I went ahead and ordered it actually, but it hasn't come yet. And I wanted to review it before we talked, or I wanted to hear before we talked. And dude, it's so good. It's incredible. It's like, Toward Infinity was kind of the one that stuck out to me previously, and I think made a pretty big impact for a lot of people. It came out a couple years ago.
22,
right? That was a really good release, but this one is like, I think, really like a masterpiece. Like it's like a marked improvement, and like it's really progressive and epic, and like it's just really, really good. So. Can you tell me about that record to start out with? It's one long track, or at least the one you sent me is one long track, but it's, it is separated down into separate pieces.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your writing process, recording process for the album to start out with?
Sure. So just a quick note. I am absolutely inept when it comes to my editing skills are really limited, and my computer skills are pretty basic. So it is one long track in the file form I sent you, but I really wanted to give each kind of piece its own name and title track, but I I just wasn't able to do that in my recording suite, which is just Audacity.
Yeah.
So each piece, which it's pretty obvious, like the transitions are pretty obvious, however seamless, it does kind of carry on one part to the next, but I wanted them to have their own. So to me, it was kind of more so as you're listening and you're taking in the artwork and everything, you can kind of have the song titles kind of not direct the journey, but just kind of help accompany the listener through the sonic experience. And I'm not trying to too pretentious or anything, but it's part of the fun of it, man. The lore of music to me, what brings me in a lot of times is themes and lyrics and the concepts and the names, the titles. You read something and you see a title that grabs you, you're like, man, I want to hear that, Right. So as you're listening, it's okay, this is steel sonic rip work, and that track was created, all the sound source for that is steel. So steel, stainless steel and aluminum, but
when I listened to it as one solid file, it really felt cinematic. Like, it felt like an album. I could hear where it sounded like songs transitioning to each other, but
Mm,
the flow and it felt like it was really kind of thought out from start to finish to have kind of a narrative arc, and that the tracks really flowed into each other. It didn't seem like just a collection of tracks just put together. Is that
mm.
true?
Man, I wish I could lie and tell you like it was all premeditated. Unfortunately, I'm not that visionary. I think it's more or less just kind of like a knack for the sounds and being able to. I don't know, man. It's almost like something that I barely understand. It's like, and which is again kind of part of the fun for me. There's like a certain alchemy that takes place. I think just compile field recordings for months and months and months, and different recordings. And in my mind, I'll kind of bank things like as I review them or go over them. I think ideas or an idea will start to kind of form, and it doesn't necessarily have a name or a direct purpose, but I start to bank things and they'll collect, and it might just be a mess of things that turn into something like Toward Infinity. Like I could have spent 2 years compiling sounds and stuff. And if I hear something, it's like, oh man, like that is gonna go well with like I'm just putting this here for now.
Yeah.
And then honestly, like when it comes down to actually finalizing things, that process, it probably takes an hour, 2 hours of like ridiculous autistic like editing, um and I don't necessarily mean like cut up editing,
Yeah.
but just like what I'm able to do in that short amount of time might take other people fucking 4 weeks. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to give myself too much credit, but I mean like nothing else exists. I'm just fucking in the zone, and I'm like finishing it. I'm like putting the pieces together like this and finalizing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that happens that quick from all the sourcing of material and recording.
But like I said, it could take years getting everything together. Like some of on Toward Infinity, it was, I mean, some of those like the string. There's like two string sources that are layered together. One of those was in an antique shop, an old like ancient fucking Chinese like string instrument thing. I just was kind of like thumbing around with it. I'm like, man, this sounds fucking awesome. So I recorded that, and then I don't know, like however many months later, I was at the art museum in Massachusetts, and they had this huge bass instrument sculpture that you could play, or maybe you couldn't play. I don't know, but I had to pluck the strings, and it just fucking rattled, man. And I'm like, man, I have to record this. So I recorded that, and so like those were banked. I didn't know I was gonna put them together, but I'm like, man, these two things are awesome. I'm saving them for something special. When it came time to like put Toward Infinity together, excuse me, I had those two things. I'm like, man, I put them together. I'm like, this sounds perfect. So I know a lot of it is kind of like a mixture of just meticulously editing, and then also happy accident type stuff where it's like I save choice sound sources for special things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to like demystify. I know some people. I got a lot of positive feedback for Toward Infinity, and some people are like, "Man, what is your process?" and all this stuff. And I don't want to like take the fun and magic out of it all, but that's pretty much it, man. Just being very anal and selective, and like I know what I like. I know what sounds good to me. And if somebody asked me what my influences were, my favorite noise artists, like it makes much more sense. Like, if you take K2 and Vivenza and Einleitungszeit. That's stuff I tap into, not to try to emulate those artists, but those are the sounds that I love, like harsh industrial noise, acoustic sounds that are just blown out, or interesting electronic sounds.
Out now on Misanthropic Agenda, Francisco Mairino, a Perpetual Host CD, Francisco Mairino's fourth full-length solo studio album on Misanthropic Agenda. A deep dive into personal loss and the banalities of life and art, A Perpetual Host captures the raw, solitary, and often acerbic extremes that drive creation. Across 4 pieces, Mairino explores sonic tension and boredom, questioning the simplicity and complexity of the mundane, with bursts of clarity that redefine existence itself. And Point of Memory, Void Pusher, double LP, tape, and CD. Void Pusher is acoustic computer music, combining digital cut-ups and live ambient noise with raw organic qualities. Each moment assumes its own physical logic, a sense of movement and consequence. In both method and aspiration, the artist seeks to listen for what is already transpiring within us, between us, around us, rather than risk drowning it out with an idea of what should be. Unknowable. www.misanthropicagenda.com. Was there a significant difference in the process between Toward Infinity and Manuhypnose?
Probably not. I think those two, I had a little bit of different gear, but it was same concept. One thing I can say is lately, like the last few years, I almost always record to tape. And then I've finally found an efficient, what's the word, like a successful way to dump it into essentially Audacity.
Yeah.
Because recording into Audacity or a laptop it just usually sounds like shit, man.
I mean, I think analog to digital conversion is like a really important step. And if people don't do it right, that cold, crappy line-in computer sound can be really...
Yeah. I did record a couple tapes were done recording directly in, and I don't think they sound bad, but I like working with the 4-track and the tapes. I think I'm able to get more satisfying sound.
Yeah. There's just a natural saturation.
Yeah, natural saturation, and it kind of, because I don't really like master my stuff. I don't like my final mix, when I said meticulously editing, I don't want to give the idea that I'm like doing all kinds of studio trickery, because I'm not. This is simply just like panning things and cropping out the weak parts. And I tried to mess with EQ a little bit, but the EQ in Audacity is kind of whack. So I will EQ things out just to give a slight difference in sound in like a panning stereo. But that's it, man. I'm not doing like limiters and normalization and all this other shit, man. I just started sending stuff to other people that haven't mastered, and I'll be honest, like I get the masters back and I'm like, I don't really hear a significant difference.
Right.
I'm just trusting that they've done something that's going to make the formatted version better. That's the idea, I guess, anyways.
That should be the idea of it, yeah.
Like unnecessary frequencies or, high frequencies and stuff like that. I don't know.
What can you tell me about the subject matter of the project and maybe how it's evolved over time? I get the sense that Toward Infinity and the new one have, sort of hints of occultism or spirituality throughout. It seems like the earlier stuff was a little bit more kind of just like industrial tinge, but there seems to be a kind of a new influence in the sound, or at least in the subject matter. Is that accurate? And what can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So I can tell you that when when I started Pain Appendix, I was on a lot of drugs. uh, and now I am not.
Yeah.
So,
Congratulations.
thanks. Um, so I think, oh man, how do I unpack that? So there's so much to say. I don't know. I know the idea is to have a conversation about this stuff, but I don't want to be punishing.
Go for it. Get
So I
into
mean,
it.
there's like the obvious tropes of noise and industrial, or at least the kind of stuff that I like. Degeneracy, mental collapse, and spiritual bankruptcy, and deviant, transgressive, violent, sexual themes. And I was living a lot of that stuff pretty viciously. So it seemed perfect for me to kind of just pour it directly into Pain Appendix, like on the first tape, there's a track called Syrian Torture Room. Obviously, I've never been in a Syrian torture room, but a lot of the subject matter was directly related to real life stuff, or at least not even as bad as some of the stuff that was going on. And like a sick part of me kind of thought also that it legitimized the work too, because I think a lot of people use these themes and they're exhausted and become kind of they lose their effect when it's not authentic or real.
Sure.
And also sometimes even when it's authentic or seems real, it can be cringy and seem overplayed or dramatized or something. So, yeah, I think there was a natural evolution. I mean, nothing that I've covered with Pain Appendix is original, and none of it is unrelated. So even like the newer, more like what you're talking about, the things that seem occult or this sort of spiritual element, it's not unrelated,
Yeah.
I think it's just a different manifestation. It's still me. And if you look back on like other releases, there's, it's not like there's a one manifesto or philosophy underlying all of the noise stuff that I've done under Pain Appendix, but it wouldn't be hard to explain how like a track like Ritual of Self-Abuse that was on a split I did like in 2017, how that's related to something like, the writing in Toward Infinity, just being, it's all about the cycles of life, and, you go through changes and transformations, and it's like turning shit into gold or something.
Yeah.
And kind of like just the process of, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the same thing, I think. I don't know. I'm in my mind, like when I think about my relationship to like the music I've done and stuff like that, I that's how I choose to look at it. That seems to be my relationship to it anyways, To someone on the outside, it might sound contrived or like, what the hell is he talking about? But, it's all, I didn't change the project name. It's still Pain Appendix. And if you listen to earlier works, a lot of the same sonic qualities are there. I've just gotten better.
Right.
Even like some of my earliest stuff, like Delayed Industrial Impact Document, that's one giant field recording, and it's all industrial sounds, like hammering and concrete hammer jacks from a job site that I was on.
Has that made a transition in the project?
I think so, because uh, for years I'd stay clean long enough to get a little bit of gear. I'd be able to, hodgepodge some stuff together that was adequate, that sounded good to me. And I would release it, but it was almost always followed by some kind of pitfall with drugs, homelessness, um, and all the other things that come with that. But being clean, like I have more stability and financial stability and clarity of mind sometimes. sometimes.
Yeah.
uh, just being able to like think clearly and be more effective with writing, and like if I have a vision of something and want to produce something a certain way, I have more aptitude, or like the ability is there, the capabilities is there, versus before. I think it's safe to say like I've just grown also, like with
Yeah.
recovery and artistically and just as a person. Um, Whereas before, maybe I was just in a blackout of some kind and recording on my floor in a
Right.
pile of needles and whatever else, and
Yeah.
like, okay, this sounds cool, and I'm gonna fucking do a split with this dude, this other maniac,
Yeah.
and that was good enough for me. And like I still do splits and stuff, but I guess I'm just trying to be better,
Yeah.
trying to evolve. Um,
Even though it is the same project, Pain Appendix, and you're dealing with a lot of the same themes and it's a continuation, do you see the content or the subject matter or your output and vision to be somewhat more, I don't wanna say optimistic or positive, but kind of have changed in a certain direction and be less, like, nihilistic and less, you know, destructive?
uh, it's a pretty good question, because I've always been drawn to like darkness, man. I mean, like before punk, before metal, before noise, any of that stuff.
Right.
I mean, I think before music, I the first thing I discovered that kind of gave me the same uh, like guidance or illumination or something is literature.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe just around the same time I started discovering punk and metal, like underground music.
Yeah.
But it was always, it's not like trying to be negative or nihilistic or misanthropic or even like existential, but just kind of like covering things that have always fascinated me, that play a significant role in um my like day-to-day or overall philosophy and outlook, whether it's film or movies or books and literature, music. Like it's like over time things just continuously revealing themselves, like this is connected to this and this and this, and it's like this really vast common thread that's connected to all these things that you discover not by chance. It's, it seems like by
Right.
chance, but then it's like, man, there's a reason why these things reveal themselves to me, and that's the stuff I like to hone in on. Those are the things that are important to me. So whether it could be interpreted as nihilistic, but I think that's kind of short-sighted. It's, for me, it's just like this, human nature, spiritual nature. Sometimes that looks ugly. Sometimes it seems nihilistic. I think there is a positive element to that. So it's a good question, because there's definitely been a transformation in myself from, the last 10 years to now. And I think that the transformation has been positive. The content seems to have changed, perhaps, but I do like to look at it like it's part of the same thing, like it's part of the same journey or something. I hate that.
Is there a
That
is there a
phrasing.
spiritual
Pardon.
role in that connects these things together for you between like the really dark stuff and even the more positive stuff? Like, is there a spiritual connection
Sure.
in your mind?
Yeah, sure. I think the most obvious, um, what's the word? Like spiritual tone is like without darkness, there is no light, right?
Right.
Um, and in any spiritual philosophy or um, even in stuff like alchemy, I don't want to seem like I'm some kind of uh like alchemist or something, because I'm not, but I like to read different stuff and it all influences me, but you're always starting from kind of like a raw material to refine something into a more precious jewel or stone.
Yep.
It's all metaphorical, but I think it's easy to relate. You got to go through hell before you get to heaven. I mean, how much more
Right.
simple can you put it?
Sure.
I don't know if that relates to it. It's not, that's not necessarily how I see Pain Appendix either. It's not, it's not like this is my spiritual journey.
No, but
Um,
I think even if you don't consciously think of it that way, it's just from an outsider's perspective looking at it. I mean, I know I know about your past with that, not in detail, but I've
mm,
kind of gathered that from knowing you a little bit. So
yeah.
I've kind of like seen that, and particularly in context of your recent work, I think it's a really interesting. It is a journey. I mean, it's a really interesting evolution and fascinating artistically to kind of see that continuation and that it's the same project and it's the same person and just seeing how you personally also have like changed, you know, physically, just as just in many ways. I see that all together.
I've gotten fatter.
You look
I've
healthier for
definitely,
sure. I mean, you look
I've definitely
healthier.
changed physically.
What was it that made you make that major change in your life?
Oh man. Uh, Dude, I started shooting heroin when I was 16. I'm 35. That's just when I started shooting heroin. I had my first fucking rehab was when I was 15. And I was locked up in a juvenile delinquency program like before that. Um, so it was just like years and fucking years of just like hitting my head against the fucking wall, and things just got worse and worse, like progressively, like it just always gets worse and worse and worse. And for so long, not really caring or not knowing that it could be different. Sorry. Um, uh, and then finally, I think I just got lucky, man, because I think most people like me, most addicts don't get clean. And especially like gutter level, like bottom level junkies. Most of them just die alone in isolation or locked up in a fucking mental ward or a jail cell. I just think I got lucky. The last time I tried to get clean, I just knew I had to do something different. Every time I got clean, like I was willing to try a little bit more. And this last time I was like, I'm going to fucking do everything they tell me to do. I'm going to try to do it. And I've been clean since then. But so I'm just thinking now, you got to forgive me, man. I don't even know what you're going to ask me. And I don't have like pre-planned out answers. But I'm just thinking about the writing in Manu Hypnoz. You haven't seen the artwork,
Right. I've seen the
but
cover.
okay, yeah. So there is. I wrote something. Watch out. Inside it says, it specifically pertains to spiritual value in man, and it's kind of funny because I didn't really write it with addiction or something else in mind, but it's kind of funny how these things, in a sort of Freudian way, just kind of reveal themselves. It kind of illustrates exactly how I feel. And with addiction, if you don't do something different, you'll just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And that idea is kind of expressed in the writing in many hypnos. It says, like a dog returning to its own vomit, the soul will keep returning to foul and poisonous parts. And you can apply that however you like, or think of it however you like. But, you have to, in my mind, it's kind of like whatever you put into your mind and body in any form, it's going to feed your spirit.
You mentioned that, with addiction, unless you make a change, you will keep repeating the same thing. And I was just curious if there was like a specific catalyst or a specific person or thing or event that like made it be like, okay, this is the time.
No, it's like an accumulation of just years of just suffering and addiction, man, and it getting worse and worse and worse. I knew that if I didn't stop, I was gonna die. I mean, one of my last runs, this was in Baltimore. I eventually got clean in New York, but it was like that same year. I overdosed 7 times in less than 2 weeks. I mean, like overdose, like Narcan administered overdose, not just falling out, blacking out or something. And I was just fucking wrecked, man. So
yeah, well,
and still trying to play shows.
yeah,
Shit. I played a show with I set up a show for Concrete Mascara, and man, I was basically gone the whole time, smoking crack outside, and it's all blurred. But yeah, I was like still trying to do tapes and record and play shows and shit.
wow, that's heavy. Well, yeah, I mean, respect for like really a huge transformation, and the fact that you were also still, and that you've been able to stay involved also with like the same music and same, art form while changing your lifestyles radically. That's a incredible feat, I think. Ryan Marks from Patreon, he asked, do you approach your process differently working on a split versus on a solo recording?
I wish I had a more interesting answer for that. So some parts are exactly the same, but also almost every time I set up to record, my shit's set up a little differently. Like I don't have a dedicated room for like a studio, or like I don't have like a lab set up anymore.
Yeah.
I used to, but I think a large portion of doing noise for me, basically, so if you just remove the name Pain Appendix, man, I just always wanted to experiment with sound and noise. My very first exposure to like that world at all, I can remember it like it was yesterday, man. As a teenager, I was going to like a college that's like my friend's friend was going to. I never went to college, but we would go out there, and it was Hampshire College. If anybody knows, it's a super liberal school. They don't have grades. They don't have they design their own curriculum. Like the teachers smoke weed with the fucking students and shit. And there's no cameras or like metal detectors or anything. It's basically like an Ivy League art school. It's super small. It's probably $40,000 a year. Anyways, we would go out there and just party, and there was a kid one day in the dorm who was like fiddling around. I must have been, I don't know, dude. I dropped out when I was 16, and I don't think I was in school, so I must have been around 16-ish. But like everybody else is partying and blah, 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 blah. And this fucking dude, like some nerd, is just sitting there on a couch with like this box, like fucking with like these sounds, and like, he was like building it too or
Yeah.
something. I just remember being like stoned out and asking him like, what the hell are you doing, man? And he told me he was building a synthesizer. And like at that point, to me, a synthesizer was just like a keyboard, like a
Right.
like a Casio keyboard or something.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, man. He was like, when I plug this in, electricity goes inside of it and it's trapped in this box. And I force it through these knobs, these pitch shifters, and these things to shape and color sound. And dude, man, I was just like,
Yeah.
that to me was like, I needed like that I feel like almost that specific moment, even though I didn't really start making noise until years and years and years later, in the back of my mind, I was just like, this is a side of music and sound and just like, yeah, man, just like the idea of taking electricity and fucking controlling it to create and emulate or synthesize a fucking sound. That was so fucking cool to me, man. I always wanted to build, like, mess with building it, I still haven't dabbled in that, but that really planted a seed. But the same kid who I went out there with is the one who exposed me to like harsh noise, Hanatarashi, Wolf Eyes, Yellow Tears, Halflings, Hospital Records.
Yeah.
He was totally into all that stuff, and he would play it for me, and I was like, man, it's cool, but like, I don't really get it, man.
Yeah.
I remember him showing me Hanatarashi and the legends and the photographs of all the shows and the destruction and violence. That appealed to me.
Right.
But it would be a little bit, it wasn't until I got into like controlled bleeding and that stuff bridged the gap. It was like, okay, there's the kind of like more musical stuff,
Yeah.
structural or rhythmic. And then it just kind of like, once I was hooked, it was over,
Yeah. That's how it goes.
But as far as like between a split and a full length, there's really no difference. I'm sad to say. Like I guess maybe more thought. I don't like saying that either, because like the split with Vincent Dallas, like I spent a lot of time and a lot of thought went into all that stuff. It's not like Michelangelo or something.
Right.
Fucking. I had some smut magazines. One of them was like an old Janus magazine. It was all flagellation. I also had a Life magazine book, all about sound. There was like a header for one of the sections that said "whipped by noise."
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, whipped by noise, and there's these like flagellation mags, and I just said to Drees, I'm like, dude, what if we called the release "Whipped by Noise," and then just kind of like had these choice images, and I did the collage up to kind of have some of that stuff, so it kind of related. But it wasn't like we were, sitting there like, man, what should we call it? Like,
Right.
it has to be profound. And it was the same, like at the end of it, like there's still parts, just like Toward Infinity and Manu Hypnos, there's still parts when I listen back, I'm like, man, like, I wish I had fucking like dialed this back a little bit, or...
Yeah.
So process is more or less the same. I think it's just like a split is a split, and a solo release, needs to stand alone on its own.
Manu Hypnos feels so all-encompassing, When I was listening to it, I had some thoughts about that it seemed really, in some way, like, musical and percussive, and like, the opening, like, the metal gongs kind of sounds and the metal drum kind of sound. I was gonna ask you about your kind of history as a drummer, and then, like I said, I didn't have the track titles when I was listening to it, but then, like, I go on Discogs and, like, I see that these first tracks that I'm, like, referring to, it's called Industrial Gamelan, like, parts 1 and 2,
Yeah.
right? As well as the
Yeah,
closing track kind of calls back to that same theme. So how does drumming influence your approach compositionally or noise-wise, if at all?
I'm sure it influences things because it's part of me. It's not at the forefront of my mind. I don't approach it like with drumming in mind. I think before I ever played drums, like picked up sticks and actually played, I was always tapping. Like I'd be listening to a song and I'd be tapping it out. So I don't know. I guess I have like a sense of rhythm in my mind. Like, man, every day, all day long, usually, I'm like, my brain is still riffing shit out, like playing drums in my head.
Yeah.
And like noise, like I like hearing noise too, like in my mind. I think it's just part of like who I am, I guess. So the beginning, like the really thunderous sounds at the beginning of Manu Hypnos. So I was at work and we were unloading an 18-wheeler, like a freight truck.
Yeah.
So we get these big, heavy machines delivered from Germany, and they have to frame up the inside so that the machines don't move, and they can attach it to the pallets. So we have to remove those in order to get the pallets out. And sometimes they come out easy. We can just zip the screws out with an impact gun. And sometimes they don't come out easy, and we end up having to just fucking bust them out with sledgehammers.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it sounded, dude, inside, it just sounded so fucking like thunderous and perfect. I was like, man, I have to record this. I didn't have a field recorder or anything, so I just recorded on my phone. And then the sort of like what you call gongs, that's a separate track. So that is 2 tracks combined.
Yeah.
2 sound sources combined. Field recordings, essentially. Me and my partner, Paulina, we went and I had this idea. I wanted to do something different, man. And the original idea was to record a bunch of metal clanging, like hours of it, and then process the sounds. I got this cool, kind of like my most expensive piece of gear, I think. It's like an analog, like a warming unit, but really it's got like a filter on it. It has distortion, gain. It's really a pretty cool little device. I wanted to record all this kind of fucking clanging and chimes and like percussive sounds and then like process it through this thing. And my idea was it would just be this long, really special piece. And then it just didn't come out the way I expected, and the processing I wasn't able to achieve what I thought I could. So anyways, I ended up just piecemealing it and editing it down, and I used that part of that, which was the original recording is like 2 hours long. So I really scrapped a lot of it and just used a portion of that for the first piece. And then at the end, the Gamelan 3, where it kind of it almost sounds like a blown out xylophone or something. It's not. I suspended all these things from like a stacker. It's like a type of cheesy little forklift, like weird little scrap metal pieces. And Paulina actually helped me. She was doing some of the banging too.
Cool. Cool. The second batch of releases from Necessary Fixation is now available, including Systems, Disaggregate C20, a highly focused recording centered on exploring the interactions between mixer feedback and source processing. Willowbrook and Systems Split C30, 2 takes on monolithic in-the-red harsh noise synthesis, orthodox harsh noise wall paired with quadrupled signal overload harsh noise. And Rien, The new source recording, C30. New ideas in extremely sparse and minimal crackle studies for true static fanatics. Please direct all ordering and wholesale inquiries to shrouded.in.antiquity@proton.me. Necessary Fixation is proud to remain home dubbed, DIY printed, and independently distributed. You know, you mentioned gear. Another person on Patreon wanted to know if you could please tell some of the best pieces of gear that you own, your favorite pieces of gear.
I'm really not like a gearhead. As much as I love, I love gear, and that's part of it. Like earlier I said, if you just take away the name Pain Appendix, the identity, I kind of went off on a tangent, but my point was part of this whole deal was just being fascinated by sound, experimenting with sound, abrasive sounds, noise, industrial rhythms, sound collaging, field recordings, just pushing a sound in one direction, finding its limits and seeing how it busts or breaks or changes, morphs into something else. So like, obviously there's an appreciation and there is an importance on gear, but I'm not, I don't own any like $5,000 synths or
Sure.
I have some pedals that are pricey, but
I think the question isn't
it's
necessarily
like,
about the price or the fanciness of it, but like any sort of pieces of gear that you're like, this is special, or this really makes my sound.
Okay.
This is like a key thing to my sound, or I really like. It could be, it could be like a $15, item.
Sure. Yeah, it could be anything. It could be a contact mic and just a really hot signal and scraping the fucking metal a certain way, like the right way, getting the right metal. So like the gear part, sometimes it's like chance choice sounds achieved just on the spot. I can say like my fucking EQ pedal is probably and it's not a special EQ pedal, it's just the basic Boss EQ. Mm-hmm. I lean heavily on my EQ pedal. That's kind of like where it starts, because that's kind of like my booster. I can dial into certain frequencies. A lot of times the signal's so fucking hot that like a nice little trick I like if it's already loud, I don't need a boost. I'll cut the EQ out, drop everything except the bass, and if I want to fucking punch through the stereo with like a fucking low end, I'll throw that on. I don't know. I don't know. What is like my favorite piece of gear? I don't really have one, man.
That's cool. I think EQ is like
the EQ pedal. I feel almost fucking embarrassed because I mean everything has its.
No, I respect that big time, because you're like, I really think your sound and your stuff is like really, the quality of it comes from the sources and also how you play them. Like, it's not like when I hear your stuff, I'm not hearing a bunch of effects. I'm hearing kind of like instruments and like I'm really hearing compositions. That's why I can tell that you're a musician and a drummer, because that's the beauty of the pieces. They come from just like playing the stuff the right way and choosing the right stuff to play. And then of course they're distorted and have like a nice texture to them, but it's not like top down sheen like on static.
I probably haven't bought a new piece of gear, and that warming unit is pretty fucking sweet. I don't rely on it for my sound, and I barely just started to really use it. I haven't really used that too much on my recordings. Live, I like it because I run everything into its stereo. Cool. So it kind of acts as like a glue for everything. Yeah. Because for a while I struggled with live performances. What I heard rehearsing at home or what worked in other acoustic settings didn't work elsewhere. And it's like some fucking shows I played were really, really disappointing, man. Worcester with Worth and Legless and Stroker. Man, I fucking rehearsed and practiced at home. I had the set down. It was pretty cool. I always leave a large amount of room for improvisation, and I was like, man, the set's going to be great. And the whole fucking time it was just like this most obnoxious, almost like a bad ground
Yeah.
humming throughout the whole fucking thing, man.
I've been
So
there, man.
anyways, I'd run out of my mixer into that unit and out
Yeah.
of the unit to whatever DI box or whatever. And that kind of like balances the sound in a way. I don't even know if that's how it was intended. The person who put me on to that, he kind of explained it that way too. He was like, this is great for kind of like just, it's like the glue, it glues everything together.
Yeah. I've been there, first of all, with the rehearsal situation versus the live thing. And I think maybe like, I think that comes a lot of times also from recording to tape, because when you record to tape, especially if you're like,
Mm.
you're usually kind of giving a pretty hot signal.
Mm-hmm.
The preamps plus then the recording of the actual tape do this really great magic trick on like,
Compression
and gluing the sound together.
Yeah, for sure.
That then, if you just go into a DI from your mixer, sometimes that's lost. So I think I think I use a similar trick. That's a very understandable and good tip, I think, for people playing live, is to.
One thing I've been interested to try, and this goes back to like, what is the setup and all that stuff. Like eventually I want to try. I've always wondered, I don't know how it works with a tape machine, like the mechanics of it. I'm wondering if you were to run like the same like stereo output from a tape machine. So does like that tape compression, does that happen only while it's recording? Or if you were to run it into the tape machine, in my mind, I feel like it probably would not work. But, would you be able to get kind of like the passive compression if you were to go out of it? Like, say I took my mixer and had stereo out into the tape machine and then out of the tape machine into, say, like a DI box. Like, would it sound like, would I get the compression from the tape machine? I've always wanted to try that. That's probably something to try. I feel like it would have to be on or something. I don't know.
Well, you in a tape machine, like say even a 4-track, if you're recording in, you're getting some of that warmth and distortion probably from the inputs, like the overdrive from the inputs, but you're getting that main warm sound from the recording of the tape. So
like the actual magnetic tape.
I do use a 4-track as kind of like my final distortion unit without any tape in it, because it has a certain sound to it. But
like just the gain or the overdrive.
Yeah, exactly. But the tape gives it a further sound. What you could do potentially, some tape, and I'm pretty sure about this, some tape decks or tape machines are like have 3 heads. They're 3 heads, which basically means you have a different head for record and play.
Okay.
And the record comes before the play. And one of the benefits of those machines is that you can monitor both the input signal and the output signal in real time while it's recording.
Right.
Possibly you could find one that you liked and like record in while you're playing live to a tape, and then set the output to the playhead.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've never really thought about that, but that would probably work. But then, not all tape decks are 3 heads. They're kind of rare, and they're kind of the more high-end ones.
But that's like a perfect example. I've spent so much fucking time swapping things out and rerouting, signals, and I'm sure everybody has. I mean, that's part of it's just kind of comes with the territory. But yeah. I'm also sure that some people probably have their gear set up, and it's like, okay, I put down the synth, the bass line, and then I'm like a fucking movie sample. And
there are two types of noise artists. There are those who do it that way, and there are those who do it our way.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not knocking any which way.
Yeah. Me neither. Some people, I admire people who are like have that set up, and they're like, they have a really methodical and consistent way of recording and performing. I'm like, ooh. Sometimes my best things come from just like trying an idea that I had for the longest time, and then it just never works, and like some little broken artifact happens, and like, oh, then base the entire recording off of like something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, I don't know. I think I would get bored. I mean, I miss playing in a band. I miss having like, the I don't want to call it just structure because
Right.
that's it's not what I love about playing in a band. But I miss playing like,
Right.
okay, do this 3 times. Play the fucking napalm riff this
Yeah.
time, and I'll play the fucking venom riff. Okay, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
do blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But something about the free form and just the nature of experimental music. I mean, that's the reason why I do it. It's not just like cathartic relief because I did drugs or
Right.
a spiritual journey, and it's not really a conceptual thing. That just comes from naturally. That's like, okay, this is who I am. That's what I'm gonna put into my music. But at the heart of it all, it's like I just love experimenting with the fucking sounds, man.
Yeah. I see kind of a loose association between you and like a handful of American artists and as well as Finnish artists. I want to talk about the Finnish connection in a minute, but like can you talk about your like relationship with Legless a little bit?
Danny? Yeah, sure. I love that dude, man. he's he's a good friend of mine. Hold on 1 second. I
Yep.
think so. Yeah, this is kind of funny. I didn't plan this out. I just found this yesterday, digging through boxes, unpacking stuff because we're moving soon. This is well, it's a Sisters of Mercy tape, but we recorded over it. This is a Bissoth. This is like a PE project that me and Danny did live, all live recordings that I would have released already, but back when we recorded, I don't know, 2016, 2017, he didn't like the vocals. He did the vocals, I did the
Oh.
noise.
Uh-huh.
But maybe he's changed his opinion. Dude, this shit is so fucking cool, man. It's like, it sounds so belligerent and unhinged. The vocals sound amazing. The noise is ridiculous. It was recorded live in a fucking rehearsal studio in West Baltimore with an massive, like insane fucking PA
Yeah.
and some really cool electronics. He had some pedals from like Diagram A, and like I had a couple synths, and it just sounds like fucking intense insanity. But yeah, Abyss Oath.
Awesome. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, no, how did I meet Danny? I met Danny through, so I played in like a dream pop band, back in the late 2000s called Wild Honey in Baltimore. One of the guitarists in that band used to do noise with Danny like a long time ago. When I finally started doing noise, that guy, my old bandmate, he was like, dude, you got to get in touch with this noise guy. You guys have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I reached out to him, and it was pretty much like we were fast friends. Like we both love hardcore, death metal, horror. We both were living a pretty unhinged sort of lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was clean at the time when I first met him, and we connected on that.
Yeah.
He showed me some cool shit. He showed me. He introduced me to like MSBR, man, and Zone Nord and Liver Mortis, like a bunch of cool stuff that I kind of missed the train on because I wasn't like plugged into the noise scene in the the mid 2000s.
Right.
Like all of the older stuff, like I did well navigating and discovering on my own, but some of the more like stuff that was more specific to the era, that like you kind of had to be there.
Right.
Kind of, that's my takeaway anyways. Like
Yeah. There's a lot of that noise. I mean, that's how it goes. Like these small releases, smaller products that are maybe around for a few years. There's a lot of great things that just don't really last, or they just get forgotten about just for whatever reason.
Like you had to be there type of thing.
Yeah.
But so he kind of like would share things with me. I shared things with him. Typical like noise friendship, or just friendship in general.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of I got some funny stories, man, with him. Just getting into trouble, causing fucking raising hell, man.
Yeah.
Um, some of it was pretty dark. Some of it, some of it wasn't. Some of it was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Danny. He's a real one, man. That's why I like Danny, because he's like he doesn't try to be anything that he is not.
Right.
And he's not apologetic about who he is,
Right.
and he's just a fucking he's a maniac. He says he hates noise, but I know deep down he loves it.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I don't know when he said that because I'm not. Well, I'll go ahead and say it. I don't care. I mean, we did a really good interview like a couple months ago, and it was like a
Uh-huh.
long conversation. We talked about everything, and he had a lot to say. And I knew he had been in kind of like a fuck noise and fuck everyone uh,
Yeah, yeah.
thing for a while, but at least when we talked, he was really like kind of positive and open and agnostic about it all, and shared where he was at now. And I was like, oh, cool. It seems like he's doing well, and I don't know, but and then he contacted me like as soon as I started editing it and promoting it, like coming this week, interview with Legless. He contacted me and was like, I don't want you to air it. And so I don't know, and we haven't really talked. I was just kind of like, all right, whatever, man. Like, peace. Like after that, I haven't really talked to him too much, and so I don't know where he really stands. Because I've also known him for quite a bit, not really well, but I met him like 2009 in Baltimore,
Hmm.
and we were kind of in touch on a more personal level than I am with a lot of people. I mean, just like we talked on the phone like once in a while, which it just
Yeah.
especially that time, like noise scene wise, it wasn't something you really do. Like
Yeah, yeah.
we only met in person, I think
Yeah,
that
we
one
talk on
time.
the phone.
Yeah, but we
There's a handful of people that like we have phone conversations,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah. So
texting or emailing.
kind of like that on and off with, and I was in touch with them on and off over the years, but just recently kind of reconnected and did that interview, and it was really cool. But I was kind of disappointed and like frustrated that this, and I felt like it was a very positive interview too. That then he pulled it just for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So
I
I
was
don't know.
disappointed because I was looking forward to seeing it. I'll tell you this. So we would have these conversations. He'd be like, "Man, I just fucking hate." He's like, "I did it for so long, and it was my life for so long." Like he has a pretty insane collection of
Yeah,
like fucking noise gems. And he's like, "I just fucking hate the noise scene." He's like, "I have a lot of friends and I love it, but also just kind of like got tired of it." That's
yeah,
all I'll say. Otherwise, I can't really speak for him. But
yeah,
then I'll tell you this: when we were living together, I ended up lending him a 4-track, like one pedal and my guitar, and I think that was it. Oh, and a practice amp.
yeah,
I hear this fucking insane noise happening, and I like creep the door open, and he's on the floor, and dude. It was like with a pedal, maybe it was like 2 pedals. I don't remember. Maybe I think it was a distortion pedal and a loop pedal or something. I don't remember, man. But it was like the most basic, corny fucking setup, and it just sounded so good, dude. I was like, man, fuck you, dude.
yeah.
Because he was just sitting on the floor making the best sounding. It sounded
He's
like
really
fucking
good.
Mac Nympho, man. It just sounded like he has a style that's like he makes like he does like loops kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
and layers them, and it's like this hypnotic but harsh, very 90s sound.
yeah.
And he didn't need, I'm always like trying to mad scientist my way through like some interesting sounds and shit, and he's just like caveman fucking
Yeah,
distortion poof, on
yeah,
guitar
yeah.
and record loop, and it sounded fucking incredible.
Tell me about the Transatlantic Deathmatch release. That was, a split right between you, Legless, and then 2 Finnish artists, and then, then your relationship with Finland and Finnish artists, because you've done a lot of collaborations and work with, I feel like, on Finnish labels, and you did a European tour recently.
Hmm.
played in Finland. Talk about that release first, and then kind of your relationship to the Finnish scene.
So I did a split with Rotat, and the first time I heard Rotat, I was really into his style of just kind of raw, primitive, but really good harsh noise, and like the sounds that he used, like broken glass, like it sounded very organic, but it was also like had like a rotten electronic sound. I asked him to do a split. We did a split, and then I don't really remember how the idea came for the four-way split. I remember I just thought it would be cool. Like, splits are cool, man. I mean, there's like the like cliche kind of like Punisher dude who's like, let's do a split. Like that we all joke about, but also everything that I've ever been into, like fucking metal, grindcore, power violence, you know, like the split culture is like a part of like connecting, meeting people from different parts of the fucking world, like doing something together that's etched into time, just creating a legacy of fucking blood that you can trace to every corner, and kind of like it's part of the beauty of having like this culture that we can share. And you know, what do? Just bet that like every solo release is going to make it to every corner of the world, or you do a split with someone in fucking Russia, and now you have something to share with someone who's on the other side of the world. So anyways, I just love that idea of connecting with other people who share like a common interest, even if the sounds are different or the style is different or whatever. Like you could do a split, which we did, Rotot and Pain Appendix, but then like in the 90s, I feel like you had a lot more creative collaborations, like people reworking their source, or you know, someone sends a tape to rework and blah 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 blah, whatever. I just thought like the four-way was a cool, just to switch it up, do something a little bit different. And also like the idea of having like two Finnish artists. It could have been Sweden or Italy or anywhere. It just happened to be, you know, I think the idea came up talking to Taro, Mr. Rotat, and he suggested inviting Maskhead. It seemed important to me to have like Finnish art and American art.
Yeah.
But the task got away from me. I know Taro produced something. I don't think it was used, because eventually what ended up happening is Manuel from Narcolepsia agreed to release it. And then after so long of not being able to finalize art, he was like, look, why don't I just do it? I'll do a fucking magazine. I'll do like a zine for it.
Yeah.
I'll do the art. And he did an awesome job.
Right.
And that was that.
Nice. And then what about touring Europe recently? You know, you were here last year, right? And you toured a lot of Europe. You were with Worth for part of the time. Assuming you spent a fair amount of time in Finland.
Yeah. Man, Europe was incredible, man. That was the first time I ever left the country, except Canada. And all my friends who play in bands and shit, they've been to Europe several times. I feel like I just always squandered the opportunity because I never had my shit together, you know? So it was really important to me. It was kind of surreal when I got there. I'm not going to say I like fucking cried or anything like that, but I definitely was like, wow, man, like I can't believe. I don't think anybody in my family has even ever been to fucking Europe, you know? Right. I think one person in my family has even been to college. So it's like, I come from a very simple working class background, and it was pretty powerful, man. It was, I'll risk sounding too dramatic, but it was, dare I say, life changing. I mean, I
Sure.
pretty much was like, so it was just fucking awesome. And then I couldn't have expected it to turn out better than it did. Everything, even, well, I mean, there was a few mishaps, and
Right.
the second leg of the tour felt like tour. The first half was more relaxed. I had given myself some time to just kind of like hang out and explore Finland. So leaving Helsinki, going to Germany, my luggage, like my gear case, didn't make it to Berlin.
Sure.
So I wasn't able to play Total Black. And luckily I got my gear the next day, so I was able to play the rest of the dates,
Yeah.
thankfully. Yeah, that was a bummer. I think Total Black might have been, besides the fest, Total Black might have had the largest audience. Hard to
Yeah.
say, and it doesn't matter. And I didn't have a lot of, I knew a couple people there. Upon getting there and being there, I was like, oh shit, I know you. But before that, I didn't really have a whole lot of connections. I mean, Human Larva, but
Sure.
that was it. So to me, it was pretty disappointing because I felt like it was my time to shine. Like I wanted to be like,
Yeah.
okay, this is Pain Appendix. Like this is who I
Yeah.
am. This is what I do. I had more of a connection in the other places. People already kind of knew what to expect maybe, or,
Right.
more of a rapport.
Yeah.
Whereas in Berlin, it was kind of like, I felt like I had to prove myself a little bit, and I
Yeah.
didn't get that opportunity. So
That's too
I was
bad.
pretty fucking bummed, man, actually.
Yeah. I'm sure by now they know. They will know soon.
I don't know. I told Brett, I'm like, man, all this means is I'm coming back, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, just let me know.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I kicked myself in the ass for not being able to do it sooner, like with bands and stuff, or just even like a leisure casual trip. Some pretty extraordinary connections made. I spent some intimate time with people whose friendship and connections I really value highly.
Yeah.
That made it. I mean, that was like almost as important, if not more important, than the actual opportunity to perform and
Right.
just be there. I mean, some of the time I spent with like Christian Olsen
Right.
after the gig, just walking around Latvia for hours, man, just talking about everything, man.
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And just wandering around and taking in the architecture. I don't know. It was just all around very enriching experience. Meeting Miko and Koyo from Pain Nail
Mm-hmm.
was pretty powerful, and Yuka Sikala. I'm probably fucking up these names,
Sure.
but
Sure.
it kind of made it more real because when I started doing noise in my bedroom, like not knowing what the fuck I was doing, I still kind of don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but putting out my own tapes and just trying to do something. I never, like, some of these guys I learned a lot from just by before I met them. So then
Right.
like getting to meet them,
Yeah.
and not just that, but then like other people who are kind of like peers to me, more so like peers, like people who started around the same time I did, like getting to
Yeah.
meet them, or people who, my friend Garrett, who he doesn't even really do noise, but he picked me up from the airport, and just sharing the enthusiasm, man, and connecting with people. It made it more real, not just like a less personal, obviously still very personal, but it's like, okay, like we're all kind of doing this thing I don't know.
Absolutely.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean.
it's
I
life
kind of
affirming.
sound
I know the first time I had the chance to meet some people from far away, I think I was on a trip for work. I had this really crazy opportunity to go to Europe for the first time through this weird job I had, and I was in Portugal, and I like I was not in the same city as Manuel, but we'd been in touch for so long, and I like
Mhm.
called him up and like made like a day to like drive to where he was, and we just had lunch together for like a couple hours. But it was like connecting the dots finally. Like
Yeah.
these long distance relationships that are so important, and most people don't even know about them or understand them. But like having these like close friends that you just kind of know through writing emails and sharing this like interest in something so kind of specific and unusual, and then
Mm.
just having the chance to like meet them and just like shake their hand and hang out and talk for a little while is just like really, really, yeah, like life affirming.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say one last thing about the trip. Besides just an overall incredible experience, every show was great. Um, One really special event that took place in Helsinki was an impromptu exploration of an underground nuclear bunker that lies below the city, with like sublevels,
Wow.
with like hazmat suits, gas masks, and I mean we had a lot of fun. Like we like put the suits on.
Was it abandoned?
That's an interesting point. So it's old. It was old,
Yeah.
but appeared abandoned. But then there were like signs that it had been somewhat recently um occupied. They probably have, someone who works for the city or the government probably goes and monitors something. Like things were on, electricity was on. um a lot of things were outdated though, so
Yeah.
you can tell it was abandoned in a sense,
Yeah.
but
But still maybe like in use or would be used.
yeah, I don't know, man. But so as we were exploring, I mean, like just the most fucking industrial wet dream industrial freak setting, man. Air filtration tanks, and what we came upon were these huge empty sub-level, I think we've determined they're used for a water retention
Uh-huh.
site, like the holding tanks, so that like if the fucking city goes down and everybody has to go here, they can fill it up with fresh water and have a supply of fresh water. But they were completely empty, and so like in the ground there was like almost like a sewer latch type thing. We opened it up and there's no ladder. Like it looked like the welds for the ladder were cut and they
Yeah.
removed the ladder, so you can't get down, but you poke your head under. And we like dropped shit down there, and the fucking reverb and delay was insane, man. Like 20-second delay or whatever, natural reverb.
Yeah.
And we're like, dude, we have to fucking get down there. And there was no way to get down. So we kind of kept moving, and lo and behold, came upon it's like a brand new steel ladder that just was like, we're like, the thing looked brand new, like it was never used. We're like, what the fuck, man? So it just revealed itself, and we're like, all right, let's do it. And we brought it to the fucking hole, climbed down in.
Oh, it was a loose ladder? It wasn't like fixed
This
there?
loose, like steel folded ladder, like a really nice one, probably like a $200
Yeah.
ladder. So we
Yeah.
carried it over, descended into the fucking depths, and we collected as many things as we could find, like metal stuff. We got like a gurney, like a stretcher, a metal one, dropped that down. These like a huge fucking 50-gallon poly, like hard poly jug with an opening that we dropped down, and other like just random, like a couple tools and things, like different stuff. We were able to find like little pieces of scrap metal and shit, but we recorded it all barely, like no processing, barely edited, just cropped out some of, like there's microphone fumbling and some kind of like boring parts, cropped that out. just had it mastered, and we're gonna release it, and you'll hear the fucking bomb sound. Like, it sounds like a fucking atom bomb, and that's the hard plastic jug that we dropped down there. It just sounds, dude, it sounds fucking insane.
That seems like the kind of thing that you don't really get to do in like 2023 or 2024.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. I mean, that was really special. It was like, that was one of the things that on the trip, it just was like, I couldn't have planned it out. Like, I would have never expected, even if none of the extracurricular and special kind of encounters and activities and events happened, if none of that shit happened, it still would have been a special trip. But some of the things were like, God, this is fucking extraordinary, man.
This is a obvious question for me, you know, just from my personal experience in life. Someone else on Patreon also had this question for you. How has becoming a father recently affected your habits, recording process, artistic outlook?
So it's definitely had a major impact. Yeah, I haven't recorded. Wow, what was the last thing that I recorded? I don't think I've recorded anything new. Probably all 2023. Field recordings, but like actually hammering shit out, twisting knobs between work and family. I haven't been able to carve out like a proper place for like creative time. Even like I thought maybe I would dial back recording a little bit, instead just maybe do some collaging, but it's difficult because the collaging stuff is almost more time consuming and space consuming than the gear stuff, like noise. I don't even have time to really be disappointed about it. Sometimes I'll feel like I'm coming apart, like loose at the seams, like my fucking brain is gonna explode, and then I'll start to think like, man, what do I normally do to kind of like wrangle it back together, get some kind of relief? And usually it's always music, some kind of artistic or creative outlet. I used to write a lot when I was younger, read a lot, but I don't write or read as much as I used to. I kind of just started doing noise obsessively. Like from when I started, even amidst all of the fucking chaos of like the ripping and running of addiction, homelessness, all that shit, man, I was so full blast with it. And collaging too. Like since I my first release, I actually had this person do it for me, Erica Frevel. I believe she even contributed some stuff to the Gift Nolan book. She's like an occult Satanist. I like paid her, I think it was only like $50 or something. When I got the collage, I was so happy with it, but I was like, you know what? Like I could do this. Like, why don't I try? I never tried. And from like the earlier releases and my earlier collages to later, I never stopped. I always went full blast. So yeah, I don't know, not as much reading, writing, and now with less recording or experimenting and collaging, sometimes I feel like I don't know. Maybe you
Yeah.
can relate as a father. It's like I'm impressed. You know, I commend you for being able to carve out time to do the things that you do. I understand you've made sacrifices too, like the distro, and you probably are not recording or experimenting with sound very often.
I haven't recorded in, like, a good few years, like,
Yeah,
that's not just fatherhood related, that's just other things related,
sure,
time anyway, but yeah,
sure.
it's hard for sure.
So you get it, and I mean,
Yeah.
for people who have I don't want to say luxury, but have the ability to just like, man, I'm feeling inspired. I'm gonna just go out to uh my garage or in my basement or my
Yeah.
fucking studio room. Like that's an awesome thing to have. And yeah, just wait until I get mine because then it's on, dude.
Yeah.
I have ideas and stuff. It hasn't stopped. Like my brain is constantly fucking going, man. I'm still like riffing. I said it earlier, like in my head, I'm constantly like
Yeah, yeah,
just it's non fucking stop, man. Um,
yeah.
Part of the reason why we're moving to Georgia though is so that we can have some help with the baby. Um, and I'm going to go back to school. I'll be dialing back my hours with work. And I'm hoping that somewhere in there, I'll also be able to get get a little space carved out so I can have some shit set up. I've been slowly moving more and more in the direction of using and processing field recordings versus like trying to um record like studio noise or something.
Mhm.
So that's going to be useful with the lack of time and lack of space,
Yeah.
because
I think the first year I'm not sure, I'm still in it, but I think the first year of a child's life, both in their life and also just the first year of getting used to that
hmm,
and, transitioning is probably pretty crazy, but I think it opens up,
yeah,
you know?
I don't know,
Like,
man.
but I think it's natural.
They're like, oh, they're like, uh, this is the easy part. I wish I could go back. You could just set them down and they stay there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never stop doing. I've always done music in some capacity. I think noise is great because I'm able to do it alone. I don't need to rely on a full band or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the greatest parts of it to me is total creative control and the convenience of doing it when you can.
And I think it's also so, it's so open-ended that, noise I mean, for a lot of us, noise might mean, like, a table with some pedals and stuff going
Yeah.
through some speakers, but noise can also be, like, some weird little, you know, an iPad, I mean, not
Yeah.
that I like that, but I mean, you can really be creative and customize your
Approach.
output to a lot of it's not like a band, you need to have a rehearsal space and a drum set and
Yeah.
guitars and a lot you can do noise. It can be purely, like, mathematical, for whoever there's a lot of different things that it can be.
Definitely. I won't say names in case of this being misconstrued as like, talking down on that sort of approach, but it is one, the beauty of it all, the no rules aspect, the no limitations, but also for me personally, I could never be satisfied with like I understand the
Yeah.
reductionism, the minimalism, it's kind of like
Yeah.
a rejection of the gearhead culture and the technical wizardry aspect that people fall into, but also it's kind of like for me, it would defeat the whole purpose of why I even do noise. Like, if I
Right.
bounce everything to a fucking laptop and then just press play and sit there and just like rock out like I'm a performance artist or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely a blessing, man. And it definitely changes things as like changes your outlook. Sure. I don't know directly relating to noise. I'm not sure. But I mean, if it changes you as a person, then it affects all aspects of your life, I suppose. And I guess it would affect, your relationship to noise somehow. I mean,
For
besides
sure.
like not being able to record as much or something. I mean,
Right.
I guess I have to think like maybe that question would relate to things like how would I restrict myself thematically or something,
Mm,
like, do I want to have some crazy fucked up offensive shit that's going to affect their life, not reflective of, but like it could reflect upon me as a parent to them or
right.
affect their life somewhere down the line in some avenue. And the thing of it is, man, if you ask me, it's like you could drive yourself absolutely bonkers trying to manipulate and micromanage every aspect of your life so that the outside world doesn't inflict its judgment upon you. That's not the
Right.
type of life I'd like to live. And I think it's
Yeah. And it doesn't work.
yeah, it doesn't work, but it's also extremely important as a person and an artist to be creatively free. And
Yeah.
I mean, that leads directly into a whole other topic of freedom of expression. And
This week on the Patreon with today's episode, we have a track by Pain Appendix from the new album Manu Hypnos called Steel Sonic Ripwork. There's also the Patreon exclusive extended segment of the interview where Pete and I continue on and talk about the importance of artistic freedom. The public episodes of the podcast are paid for by the Patreon. So if you're a fan of the podcast, if you watch or listen, be sure to support it at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. What do you got coming up soon? I mean, I know you've had a not so recording heavy year, but
yeah,
do you have any things in the works in terms of things coming out or shows or things like that
yeah,
planned?
yeah. So this year, everything I released in 2023 was pretty much recorded in 2022 or earlier. You know how the labels and the process of releasing shit can sometimes take forever. Now, some of that is spilled over into 2024, like a split with Atrophist and a split with
Mhm.
Umpio, and then that live nuclear bunker session in Helsinki. That will be released, I think, pretty soon, actually. I believe Satato Awada agreed to release it. Hopefully, I'm not speaking too soon. Last I heard is Satato Awada was going to release that.
Satatuata is an EU-based label and distribution for harsh noise, industrial, and experimental sounds. The online distro is located at satatuata.net, providing regular updates of new releases and offering worldwide shipping. That's Satatuata, SATATUHATTA.net.
Oh, and finally, a split and collaboration with Hollow Serpent Tooth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that'll finally be coming out after massive delays. I mean, we were making really good headway on that. Really cool collaborative process that was cooking along, and then kind of started to slow down until just kind of fucking stopped, mostly because of my life obligations. But Mike, who does Hollow Serpent Tooth, finally picked up the reins for me, like picking up where I left off, kind of, and just knocked out some of the last final touches. He mixed and mastered it. He also does mastering as Marshall Sound. That's pretty much finished. All the artwork has been finished. Everything is in line to be released, I think. Yeah, and I just got a picture from the label of all the blanks. I have plenty of ideas for like more new recordings. I just need the time and space to execute them. I've been stockpiling field recordings, man. Just like I've got a huge, massive collection of field recordings. And shows, I'm playing Bangkok last weekend of March and then returning to Europe in August.
Are you going to the Hospital Fest?
Yeah, yep. Me and Paulina are.
Oh, cool. Great.
Paulina is my second half, my better half.
Yeah.
She just
That's
flipped me off.
Yeah. All right, so what are your top 5 noise releases of all time?
Oh man, oh man. You know how fucked up of a question that is, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of told you before we started, like I packed all my tapes and CDs up, and I thought that that would make it easier because I said, all right, I'll just limit it to vinyl. And also I want to know, I'm pretty sure everybody does this, but it's stuff that I own. Like some of my favorite or the most impactful things have been shit that like I'll probably never get my hands on. I just only have MP3s or something, you know?
Right.
But anyways, so I started going through some stuff, and then I couldn't take it anymore, man. I had to pop open the boxes and look through everything else, and then it just got harder and harder to narrow it down. But I've got a few things set aside. Let me grab it here.
Yep.
All right, so here we go. This
Yeah.
Ein Leichtenzeit.
Nice.
This record, man, this band is one of my favorite fucking bands. And honestly, I had a hard time between picking this and a few other things, but I chose this one because it's so, I don't think this is their best work, but this album has the fucking sounds vary. Like the first 2 tracks are like a maelstrom of fucking like hard, harsh, heavy hitting industrial sounds. It's like, it's fucking harsh noise, but it's also pure industrial music. And then it changes and goes in some really odd territory with like electronics and what I can only guess is like analog synthesizers. I think the second track, it even sounds like there's like these fucking weird kind of schizophrenic sounding vocals, and it sounds like he's just like pinching or fumbling with a live chord that's not plugged in, like kind of sounds.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, I think that this originally, I might have this fucked up, but I think originally this was a tape that came out in like 1991. I mean, the picture, sorry. I mean, this is just like, this is the stuff that gets me fucking going, man. It's just like I guess maybe now sort of stereotypical, like the industrial factory setting, but it just looks so fucking cool, man.
It always works. It always evokes what it's supposed to, I feel.
Yeah. One of my favorite projects. I'm not necessarily saying that this is their best work, but I love, this is very important material for me. In that same spirit, taking the jacket off so it doesn't reflect. This fucking record, I don't know, man. It's one of those things. Everybody says this, I'm sure, in their own way. You could ask me next week; it might all be different. But one thing that I know for sure is that this record, for as long as I can remember, from the first time I heard it, this was to me like like this is how it is supposed to sound. This was like I don't know. I think forever I thought that this was the best fucking noise. 1984, and it's just perfect. Like, and it sounds like it's totally live. I don't know what the fuck they did tracking it out and arranging it. Who knows? But the sound itself is what I mean. Like it's like one dream of just this rolling odd. There's weird sounds, odd sounds, harsh sounds. It all sounds mechanical and real, acoustic. It's not over processed. It's just like how it should fucking sound. And I just think, and what a juggernaut of a group. I mean, their post-industrial work afterwards, what they got into, it's so cool to look back and be like, yeah, it started with this massive fucking, I don't know, like the epitome of harsh.
Super noise record.
Yeah.
Super harsh industrial noise record. It sounds way, way more contemporary and
For
modern than
sure.
it was.
And this is a good example of like Unlichtenheit, I didn't get into till later, but this was one of the first, like before I really connected with harsh noise stuff like Chop Shop or
Yeah.
K2 or something like that. Like this was a project that I found from industrial compilations that I liked. Like, you know, I got into Coil and Non and Throbbing Gristle and
Yeah.
I liked Eins Versenden Bauten and stuff like that first. And through those projects came across stuff like this, and this was like, oh wow,
Right.
now I kind of fucking get it. This I finally got on CD recently. Vepra Suicida. I had forever just MP3s of this stuff that were like I played the shit out of that stuff, man. And between Alexander, this guy who does this project, the artwork and the execution, it's pretty much perfect. I think it's perfect. It's everything that I like or that I look for. The Lanaja Mass stuff is incredible, but this material, and it's really difficult to like choose one of these CDs and like one of the tapes or releases because they're all so unique. But yeah, this one I think it just flows really well, and it's totally industrial music, industrial noise, but also when it starts fucking cooking, man, it's just harsh noise, man. It sounds like, I don't know what he used exactly, but it sounds like it's heavily, like a heavy use of tapes, and it's just really well put together. There's, again, like not to be redundant, but a lot of fucking weird sounds too. There's a nice balance of what like I think is really special about older noise, like going into weird territories, not being afraid, like not being afraid to just fucking to just hammer it out and like harsh some shit out, and I don't know. It sounds like fucking noise music, you know? This fucking bad boy here.
Oh.
The Suklif Jugen Pleasure Corpse. This is the campaign tape, but bootlegged on vinyl. I think this is quite rare. It was a birthday gift years ago. I didn't even know what it was when I got it because I was like, what is Pleasure Corpse?
I've never heard of that. I'm not super like a expert on them, but I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
that version or that release.
This is, I believe, hopefully I'm not wrong about this. I think this is basically the campaign tape. Yeah, for sure. Hopefully I don't get character assassinated for this, but I just always thought Suklif Jugen was a cooler fucking name than White House. Obviously, White House is like the mighty mighty, and they're earlier than Suklif Jugen. It's different. It's not the same, but like where most people are like, they worship White House. I listen to Suklif Jugen more. And also their later input, like as a project, as a band, he got more into like rock, like some traditional rock kind of template for. And I liked that stuff too. It reminded me of like the same trajectory as the old like Ramla and all them guys. Because that obviously appeals to me because I played in bands, and so it was like it's like, okay, I'm not an outsider here. These guys get it too. It's like all the same fucking world, And then this tape, which I actually got not that long ago. This is K2 Maximum Lateral Pressure. Trying to pick a K2 tape that's the most influential. I mean, this project influenced me immensely. I mean, you can imagine, especially the earlier stuff, all of the sheet metal and scrap metal, junk metal stuff. Not so much the cut up style, although I mean that's pretty characteristic of K2 in general, but especially the older material like this fucking tape, Rusty Tongue. But I don't own Rusty Tongue, so this tape, the first half of this tape is just fucking typical K2 sheet metal sonic onslaught with like a choice perfect fucking processing. And then the B-side gets kind of weird and spacey, almost psychedelic. There's a lot more spatial atmosphere going on. So that is immensely important to me as a product, as a tape. And that is 5, Oscar.
That's 5.
But this, I can't not state the importance of this.
Yep.
It's just the epitome of industrial noise, man. What else can you say about it?
For sure. Vivenza. What about like 5 projects or releases of the past year or so that you're really into?
Oh, damn. That one I didn't really prepare for. So
off the top of your head.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people use this as an opportunity to just plug their friends. But you already know. I mean, what would I tell you? Worth and Legless, and I'm not going to just state people who I'm friends with, but I think that Stinkfinger is great. Finnish project. He's not new, but the project is new, and that project is fucking sick. It's just simple, primitive, but really good. A lot of junk metal noise. It's heavy, it's brutish, but it's tasteful. And Room of Pleasure from Russia. Hasn't done much. He's one half of another project called Rectal Nylon. But his solo project, Room of Pleasure, is really great. I don't know how else to describe it, but just rushing fucking sounds like psychotic fucking electronics, man. It's noisy, but it's kind of like power electronics. It's just good, nice, refreshing sounds that sound kind of like a fucking maniac is recording it. And his artwork is awesome. And I really like Hollow Serpent Tooth, man.
Yep.
He's his stuff is varied. It's bounced around a little bit. He had some black metal stuff under that name, but which is awesome. And then his noise output, it's like more like industrial power electronics for sure.
Yeah.
But it's really well executed. He's very tapped into what he does, and he's been doing music for so long, even though it's a new project. Like he knows what the fuck he's doing. It really reminds me of like Operation Clean Sweep or something. Like sometimes Genocide Organ. It sounds like menacing use of synth, and this kind of I don't know, like just sounds like. Sometimes it sounds like the music is preparing you for war or some like world downfall or something like that,
Sure.
I really like Golden Purifier a lot. He's not really new, but that's a new project. All the stuff that I would have said like a couple years ago has gotten so much recognition now. Robert Fuchs, Star, that stuff's not new. Not that it needs to be something like new, but there's no need to bring this. People have been getting a lot of recognition. So,
Sure.
Anyways, I don't know. I think those 3 are important enough.
Those are good. Yeah.
4.
Cool.
Golden Purifier. 4. Excellent.
4+. Yeah. All right. That's great. Cool. Well, Pete, anything else you want to mention that I didn't ask about, or anything else you want to tell the people?
I think that's it, man. I think I've said enough. Hopefully my rambling makes sense and isn't too punishing.
No, you rambled good for us. You made perfect sense. And it's nice to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time out of your morning. Great work on all your new stuff.
Thanks, man. Glad you liked it.
People should check out that new album particularly, and looking forward to what you got going on in the future, and hopefully see you in Europe in the next
that would be nice
year or so.
All right. Yeah, thanks for
take care,
inviting me, man. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Head over to the Patreon now to hear the extended segment of the interview, where Pete and I continue the discussion on the importance of freedom of expression. You can also download the track Steel Sonic Ripwork from his new album Manu Hypnos. All that and much more is over at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. And a quick reminder about the ongoing podcast schedule. Public episodes of the podcast air 2 times a month, typically on the first and third week of the month, and on the alternating weeks you can catch WCN TV content on Patreon. WCN TV is a Patreon-exclusive subsidiary of White Centipede Noise, producing even more specialized noise media content, going beyond the limits of the traditional podcast format. Some examples of WCN TV content are After Blast, that's follow-up interviews with certain artists, album reviews, and premium content like Noise Cribs, with much more in the works for 2024. Subscribers at the Premium Plus level get access to all WCN TV content, as well as free copies of each new White Centipede Noise release. There's a new Jim Haynes CD around the corner, and a reissue of Sex Regular by Prayer Extrovert shortly after that, based on the original Hatband packaging and featuring extensive liner notes from Koyak Hat. Don't forget that by supporting on Patreon, you're not only getting all the bonus content and gifts, but you're financing the public episodes of the podcast, making them accessible for everyone to hear. Head over to patreon.com/White Centipede Noise to support. Thank you.